Hi, everyone. For today's episode of A Guy with a Scarf, I have the pleasure to have with me Matthew O'Riordan from Ably. And I've been collaborating with Ably, full disclosure, in the recent months, because after the first conversation we had, I discovered that's something I wanted to have some years ago when I was doing a lot of fun engagement experiences in digital that needed a lot of real-time movement of data, etc. So we kind of cap on the technical level, and then I think what they're doing is really important for our space. So that's why we are here together. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Carlo. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm trying to survive 36 degrees in Torino, but it's summer, so can we complain? So let's start from you. I know that this is not the first baby in terms of business that you had, correct? What's your story before this?
So, I mean, I've always been a software developer. In my previous role, I started a business which was a digital marketing subscription business. It was called eConsultancy. So I was the CTO. My co-founder at the time was more focused on the sort of marketing, content, commercial side of the business. I was really focused all on the engineering side. We did a trade sale in 2012. And I've had a few other little businesses along the way, but that's probably the biggest one, the one with the meaningful exit, I suppose. And that in many ways, that's what led to Ably. Was after eConsultancy was when I started exploring different ideas, and Ably came to me. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just realized we have talked a lot of times in the last 2 months. I realize now that I was a customer with my previous company of eConsulting for like 2-3 years. It was the beginning. It was digital marketing, sophisticated thing. Oh, so that I didn't know. This is sincere, authentic surprise that I remember that. Okay, sorry. Go back to and tell me about Ably if you want before what will be the main discussion of today, which is obviously in my field of sports and media, etc. And fun and games.
Yeah, so I mean, after eConsultancy, being sort of entrepreneurial, I started, looking at different business ideas. And being a software engineer, I kind of came at it from a very technical perspective of building prototypes, trying to kind of come, and they were all quite different. They were from a consumer ideas through to B2B ideas. And this, you got to remember, this is 2012, and at that time, 2013, what I started to notice was that companies that embedded real-time capabilities into their products stood out. So things like Trello, we all had project management tools. Suddenly Trello came in and was like, wow, this is amazing. You can do things. Google Docs was like, wow, you can all collaborate on docs. Everything where there was a real-time, collaborative, live sort of capability, it really kind of set products apart at that time. And so in all the ideas I was looking at, real-time just was naturally a key component to what I was trying to do. And whilst trying to add those real-time capabilities, that's kind of where I discovered that it was quite a hard problem to solve. There were lots of solutions, to be clear. There were open source solutions, there were cloud solutions, but they were all what I would classify as really notification solutions. And so, when they thought of real-time, it was like notify someone that something's happened. But if you're trying to build more complex applications, you think of something like Google Docs, it's really more about integrity of the communication. If I'm editing a doc and you're editing a doc at the same time, the same doc, we can't diverge. We can't have a notification that arrives out of order, because then my document reflects something different. I can't have something get lost. And so what I discovered was all of these products were very much I suppose, really designed for the first generation of what real-time applications needed, and not what we need today, which is these sort of highly integral sort of solutions that we maybe take for granted now. But, the fact that these things work, we all see the same experience, is quite hard to do. And so that's why I started Ably, because as a developer, I'm like, well, if I'm trying to solve this problem over and over again, this is an opportunity for me to provide this technology to other developers. And that's kind of where we set out. Yeah.
And am I correct? Because my first memory of what we would call now a real-time application was the presentation of, I think, Marissa Mayer, maybe, of Google Wave. Do you remember Google Wave being presented by Google? Yeah. For me, that was the first moment. It became basically it became just went inside everything Google does, etc. So,
Yeah,
but
and
now
you
it's obvious, but
Yeah.
it was not obvious at the time. It was like a miracle of seeing these things working on all, reacted at the same time in real time. That was quite a big change. I agree.
It's interesting you mentioned Google Wave because I would say Google Wave was the first iteration of real-time data in the way like what we envisaged it, which is it's high integrity, low latency. You can kind of power these collaborative experiments, but you can build real applications off the back of it. But weirdly, Google also had something before, which is probably the most prolific real-time application, which was Gmail, which was where notifications was sufficient. Like just notifying you had a new email was enough to make the application feel like it was real-time. But if you didn't get a notification or it arrived late, it didn't undermine the entire experience. Whereas Google Wave, not solving those problems, would have undermined the whole experience. So interestingly, they even went through that iteration themselves from notifications to what we would consider to be true real-time applications.
And so, and basically, at the beginning, you applied this kind of technology to many different verticals, I can imagine. And what shape did you give it? Is it a product, a platform, an infrastructure? What is it?
Yeah, it's. I mean, we were very focused on providing APIs for developers to build their applications. So we were very, I would say, we were quite low level in the stack. And what I mean by that is, it's an API that is generic, a bit like a database. A database isn't for a particular use case. A database is just a database. I mean, you do get some database that design, but generally, a relational database, as an example, can be used for any vertical, any segment, any kind of. And Ably was a bit like that. It was just a set of APIs to get data to your devices, get data back from your devices, allow devices to communicate with each other, and some sort of APIs that sit on top of that. Like if you're thinking of real-time experiences, you might need things like you need to know if someone else is online or not at the same time. Yeah. So they're natural APIs you have, but they're not segment specific or use case specific. They're very generic. And that's how we started. And it was very much just, for developers, built by developers for developers. And as a result, to your question about where do we focus, we just attracted people from every segment, every vertical, or sectors. And it's really only over time we started to see these clumps of, oh, hold on, like we seem to be adding more value in this area, or there seems to be more of a scale problem in this area. And quite frankly, that's where we shine. Like we, as a business, we very much, I'd say, over-engineered the system in the early days around the idea that we wanted to service, internet scale. But that over-engineering, which in most businesses I would say is a mistake, is the reason why we ended up attracting customers that do things at tremendous scale. And so that's kind of how we thought, I suppose, have come to the sort of sports fan engagement space, is that a lot of those customers had this problem of huge scale arriving in a short amount of time, and how do you solve for that problem? How do you engineer the system? And and today we service, I don't know, about 1 billion devices a month. So servicing a large event with 20 million devices is not a big problem for us, but for most people, servicing 20 million devices is a big problem. So that's kind of how we've ended up, I suppose, attracting a lot of customers in this space and now focusing on it.
So you basically the very often you look website, you watch websites from companies, and it seems they designed by business strategy. We want to do this vertical, this vertical, this vertical. What you're saying is you more kind of observed the emerging vertical bottom up and decide, okay, in this area we see that these clients are doing this and this, so there is a case for us. So your vertical are born, I don't know if I interpret you well, are both born bottom up, and then obviously you specialize and you create maybe specific API. And by the way, this is super technical, but let's go less technical. The reason why we talk today and we're cooperating recently is because you entered the fan engagement space by creating, but you say it properly, but creating, if you want, experiences, enablers specific to sport, entertainment, media, in this last month. So what is the case? Why do you think fan engagement is crucial today in terms of media and consumer business on digital? And why do you think real time is also more important? in that case?
I think there's two things that we need to talk about. One is just broadly, and this is not fan engagement specific, but it has an impact on how users are engaging with products. Is, what we've seen in real time, in the real time space, is there's sort of three categories of real time sort of engagements. The first was live experiences, which what we consider, someone's got some data and they're broadcasting out, very much like video streams. You're just broadcasting out what's happening, and that happens in the data space too. Like we might broadcast, we do the Australia Open every year, and we broadcast out the scores and the commentary and all of those sort of things. But it's very much a one-way, unidirectional broadcast, and that's where real-time experiences really started. Then the next one has been what we call shared live experiences, which is maybe more akin to what you expect in fan engagement, which is people are watching a live experience, but they're also engaging with each other. So it might be chatting, or maybe in a SaaS application, it'll be seeing what other people are doing. But it's sharing the experience of something, but you're not interacting with the experience, but you all interacting with each other. And then what we see is the next iteration of that is collaborative experiences, where people are actually engaging with each other and manipulating the experience. So, it's more obvious in things like, I don't know, maybe Miro, where you've got a whiteboard and you're editing things together. That's, collaborative. Now, if I bring this back to fan engagement, I think we're seeing the sort of same sort of journey for fans, in that, more traditionally people would go watch an event on television, broadcast type model, or live streaming. But the younger generation are demanding more. They want to share it with friends. They want to engage with each other. They want to communicate about it, and I think it's even getting to the point where they want to engage with the event in some way meaningfully, which is where the collaboration part comes in. I don't think we're there yet, but I can see that that's kind of coming. But really, what we are saying today is this sort of shared live experience, where they don't want to just consume the feed. They want to consume it with their friends and engage in it and comment on it and capture it and share it on social media and do all of these sort of things. So that's the shared experience. And what I think where we've seen a non-obvious problem emerge, and where we're really well suited to help solve that problem, is that in these shared live experiences, you got this explosion of the amount of data that is communicated between fans. So, when we go back to, again, the live stream model, you've got one feed of data going to each user, each fan, and that's a predictable amount of data. But now with these shared live experiences, if you've got 1,000 fans communicating with 1,000 fans, that's potentially, I don't know, 1 million events if each of them communicate to each other once. But, as soon as you go to 1 million fans to 1 million fans, you sort of, you're going into the trillions of events and hundreds of trillions of events very, very quickly. And so you got this exponential amount of data that everyone needs, because they're all communicating with each other and they want to share the experience. And it just creates some immense technical problems that, it's, and I say non-obvious because it isn't obvious until you start to reach some scale.
Yeah.
And suddenly you notice the data volumes are climbing exponentially, not linearly. And so, we're certainly, I think this is where, us as a business, providing the infrastructure and the APIs for businesses who want to deliver these fan experiences is really valuable, because it's a bit like CDNs, right? No one, fan engagement, most fan engagement businesses don't try and build their own infrastructure globally and host their videos and host all their media. They depend on companies to solve these, I wouldn't necessarily say hard infrastructure problems, but significant, and like they need a lot of investment and and maintenance and scale to make it worthwhile, the economies of scale. And I think we're sort of like the next version of CDNs, the sort of real-time engagement CDN, where again it's a problem that they could solve, but it's a problem they shouldn't solve. It doesn't make financial sense, right? We can do this at a scale they'll never do it at, and pass on those economies of scale. And so I think this is where there's a really nice fit of where we started and the wave of adoption of these sort of fan engagement experiences.
And I think one of the reasons for, partly if you want the solution part of it. So, okay, I want to do it. How do I do it if I build it on my own and operated platform? as a media or sport or entertainment entity. I want to create this experience. It's also the fact that this is now users are absolutely getting spoiled by the big tech companies, big social media companies. You were mentioning Google, but I mean Instagram. Everything there is real time at massive scale. So when they go to, and already we need to convince them to go to your app, right? Or to your OTT or to your website, you as a sport entity or a media entity. It's not easy because they have social. Why do they need to come to you? We don't know. On the other end, the fact that then when they come, it's cumbersome, it's not solid, and if it scales, it collapses. That's the real issue. I think this is the way I interpret it, at least. Tell me if it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I don't want to maybe extrapolate too far, but as you say, that this is the challenge the brands face. How do they create enough of a reason for their fans to use their channel versus the many other ways they can consume it? And there are lots of opportunities. I mean, it's this, obviously from a content perspective, maybe they've got unique content, but they can have like-minded fans engaging with each other. They can have gamification things that are built into it. But all of these things are still fundamentally, I think, underpinned by that live experience that they're sharing with other fans and sharing with the brand. And so, it does feel like it's not necessarily a race, but everyone has to keep innovating to keep their fans engaged with them on their channels.
But one thing that I noticed, because as you were saying, the first thing we started to do in real time, and in my case in sport, was like back in the days, like at the beginning of everything, was real time live match center or live score, whatever you want to call it, like you were mentioning tennis. But I did like hundreds of them. And obviously keeping everything updated in real time, consistent, and minimizing the traffic and the latency was very, very complex. That's why I get excited when you talk, we have this, and it's whatever milliseconds. Ooh. And to be honest, the moment where I realized that that there could have been a better way was around 2012 for the London Olympics. We already developed like a lot of these tools, but the Olympics are very complex, starting in a few days, by the way. And the amount of data and the complexity of the data was really, and we did decently good, but obviously knowing that as we were using the cloud for certain things, the CDN for certain things, there was a CDN for real time available, it would be a savior. I mean, that was my true experience, to be honest. And I always say, that's the reason I talk to you, not that I'm saying that because I talked to you. So that was a real need from at the time I was a CTO, CPO, product and technology person. Honestly, yeah. And one thing that I noticed, and maybe I don't know if from your side, you appreciate it. The moment you have these tools in terms of ideation and creativity, and not having your tech team or product owner coming back and say, oh, this we can do because, we can do it, but it's shaky. I think you can have a lot more interaction and experience and user experience ideas because you know that these things are doable or there is an API doing that.
Yeah.
And I think if I think today of website apps or experiences that don't have this kind of real-time engagement part, it seems they're old, to be honest. If I go to something that is flat and there's no interaction, the interaction are very cumbersome and slow, it's not today. I mean, it's what I was doing in 2008 or 6 or before. But that's true story, so I'm not not just because I'm talking to you. And what kind of client are you? And I know you cannot maybe possibly name names, but I don't know. Are you talking to or are you working with leagues, with broadcaster? What kind of type of client, category of clients you're talking to?
So, I mean, for us, really, we're operating in quite a big spectrum of companies that are what we would consider sort of more like live social type activities. So that's live video streams, not necessarily about sporting events or anything like that, but individuals, broadcasting out, a lot of engagement around that. We work with a lot of sports clubs directly. So that is, everything from basketball to football. I mentioned obviously Tennis Australia earlier. I think the thing that we found is that is the bigger the problem, the more value we add. So it tends to be that I can't name all the brands, unfortunately, we work with, but it's a lot of tier one sports brands and media brands because their scale problem becomes a real problem. I mean, that's where it's the criticality of it, the impact of their biggest event of the year not working is huge for them. And you talked about fan engagement, kind of giving people reasons to come. You can also give people reasons not to come back, which is the fan experience didn't work. And we recently had a customer, which again I can't mention, and nothing to do with us, but they did have an issue during the event. And their fans just left and went to another platform. Now, I don't know if they're going to come back next time, but that's exactly the behavior. We know that because we saw the stats and they didn't come back mid-event. They went somewhere else and never came back. So it's real. Like this is exactly, people are a bit more flippant, I would say now, and they will just choose the platform that meets their need. So it's really quite a range of platforms and brands. I mean, one other thing to bear in mind is because we're a developer platform, we also work with technology companies that work with these. So, I mean, a company we can mention is Stadium. We've been working with Stadium for quite a long time. They work with lots of football clubs. And we've been providing the technology for them to go and power the football clubs and provide those real-time experiences. It's a great partnership there because we've been working with them a long time. They just know that the infrastructure exists and they can kind of deliver those experiences at any scale.
And what do you think? What is the future looking like from here? Do you think just increase? So I think we are kind of at the beginning of this small revolution. Do you already see a next phase, or is just making this more adopted? Because very often you need to be very consistent and keep doing the same thing so that it gets adopted, and then you can go to the next steps. Where do you think you are? Initial phase or maturity?
I mean, I agree. It's early days. As an example, we see a lot of our customers now talking about now that they've implemented sort of the fan engagement, the shared experiences. Now they're looking at gamification because now now we need other reasons to gamify to bring people back to then also engage with each other. So now those two things come together, and then they have unique content to bring people back to then talk about that content. So they all kind of fit together. So there's just an example of, are we at the early stages? I think we are. We're going to keep finding more and more things that are going to drive people back to this engagement with the brand, but engagement with other fans. I think the other thing we're seeing is, one of our very large customers is Genius Sports. They broadcast data through our platform to other companies. I think there's lots of new data sources emerging that are going to be very interesting to brands and how they manipulate that. So, for example, we work with NASCAR. They publish the telemetry of the cars through their app, through our platform into the app. And that means fans are far more engaged, especially the ones who really love NASCAR. They want to see what's happening in the car and the telemetry and the temperatures and whatever it is. And so I think that's probably another area of growth, just more data so that people can interact. And of course, we've seen things, in the adverts that we've seen with Apple's Vision products, I think we've all probably seen that video with the F1 and they're watching the F1 and they're seeing, the little 3D model of all the cars driving around.
Yeah.
Of course, that's very data heavy, right? That is data driven, driving that 3D model and the video stream. And I think that's probably where we're going to start seeing more and more of those experiences, whether it's going to be immersive VR type experiences. I don't think that's really that important from my perspective. I think it's more that we just expect more data, more ways to engage with it. Yeah.
And last question, not to miss the trend of the year, anything to do with AI?
So I think where we're seeing interesting things in the AI space is for AI to be able to respond in real time to what's going on. And we think about these magic moments, these, a goal scored or something meaningful in the event. And often I think when you look at, again, I'm going to say, the younger generation, they're not actually watching the whole game. They are in and out of apps and changing things. And what they rely on is, notifications and things like that to bring them back. So I see a huge opportunity in AI to get their attention. Summarize what's happened because that's how they want to consume information. Summarize what they need to know and bring it back, but give them a reason to come back to their applications. And so I think that there's definitely an immediate need now to kind of drive that engagement.
Okay, thank you for going deeper into real-time fan engagement, a space that is always very difficult to define. Not sure that we help a lot, but at least, especially for the more product and technology-minded people, I think there's a lot of, food for thought after this conversation. So thank you, Matt, for that.
Thanks for having me on, Carlo.
Ciao.
Okay, ciao.